Hello, Professor. My name is Xu Xiaolejia, and today I like to share passports and international relations. This summer, I looked into many short-term programs in different countries, and I found that as a Chinese citizen with my Chinese passport, I could enter some countries without a visa. For example, Singapore allows 30-day visa-free entry, but not all countries offer this. There are still many places I can't visit without a visa. In addition, each country's passport gives access to a different number of destinations. That made me wonder, why are some passports so powerful and others so limited? After 4 weeks of studying international relations, I try to use what I've learned to think about this question. So before we dive into how passports reflect power today, let's take a quick look at how they began. The modern passport system emerged in the early 20th century, particularly after the World War I, when national borders became more clearly defined and strictly controlled. It wasn't just about helping people travel. Passports were developed as a mechanism for governments to control borders, enforce sovereignty, and monitor population movements. In fact, one of the most important ideas about this comes from sociologist John Toppi. He argued that the states monopolized the legitimate means of movement, meaning governments took over the exclusive right to decide who could cross borders and under what conditions. So, in a way, early passports were not about freedom, but about power and about the state's growing control over identity and mobility. Over time, these documents transformed from simple letter of instruction to standardized identity documents, reflecting the rise of consolidation of modern nation-states. Now let's take a look at visa-free agreements, something that directly affects how useful a passport is in practice. When countries decide whether to allow visa-free access, there are different types of agreements. Sometimes it's mutual, like between EU countries, but sometimes it's one-sided. This is called unilateral visa waiver. Why would they do that? There are several decision factors involved. Nations consider diplomatic relations, security concerns, and perceived migration risk when granting visa-free access. These kinds of decisions might look unequal, but they don't always come from pressure or power. Sometimes they reflect trust and cooperation, which brings us to the liberalist perspective. According to liberal theory, international institutions help foster cooperation by reducing uncertainty and transaction costs. This can enable agreements even between nations with power imbalance. So, from a liberalist point of view, visa-free access isn't just about power. It can also reflect shared interest, rules, and institutions that promote mutual benefit. So based on what we've just seen, we can realize that the passport itself doesn't carry inherent meaning or power. Instead, it's an idea, perceptions, and social structures around it that give it value. This perspective leads us directly to constructivism, a theory that helps explain how such meaning are built over time. As noted in the Leiden thesis, passports create binary oppositions between nations and peoples, for example, the West as racial and moral, and the global South as the opposite. This reflects a constructivist view of international relations. As Sumuro puts it, the structure of human association are determined primarily by shared ideas rather than material force. Identities are constructed by these shared values. In other words, things like nationality and the value of a passport are not just based on fact or power, but shaped by social meaning and collective beliefs. Finally, even international trust isn't something that naturally exists. It is constructed through history, through shared values. repeated interactions, and the institutions that countries build over time. So overall, these slides show how constructivism helps us understand passports as tools shaped by identity, perception, and ideas, not just documents controlled by security policy. And here are 4 key ideas from a constructivist point of view on how passports actually work in our world today. First, passports aren't neutral. They actually create these strong us vs them divisions. The West is seen as racial and model, while people from the global South are viewed as backward and even dangerous. This isn't based on facts. It's a way of thinking that's been socially constructed over time. Second, something like nationality may feel fixed or natural, but it's really a social label. Passports give that label power, and that power is shaped by colonial history and global politics, not just geography. Third, passports now go far beyond just traveling. In many parts of the world, your passport can influence who you marry, whether you can get a good job, or even how you are treated in society. It's become part of people's daily life and social values. And finally, the power behind passports is dangerous because it's so normalized. We rarely stop to question it. We just accept visa bans or travel restrictions as standard without thinking about how unfair and historically rooted this whole system really is. And now let's come to a conclusion. Let's think of the passport not just as a travel document, but as a mirror. It reflects how the world sees you based on where you are from. Firstly, passport reflects value. They are not neutral. A strong passport usually means your country is seen as safe, modern, and trustworthy. A weak passport may mean your country is viewed as unstable or risky. These are not just facts, they are judgments based on international beliefs. Then we have invisible power. Constructivist theory tells us that power isn't only about military or money. It's also about ideas, how we label others, and what we believe is normal. So the idea that certain passports are stronger is something we've all agreed to over time. Finally, we ask, can this change? If power and identity are socially constructed, they can also be reconstructed. Maybe one day we will move toward more equal access to global mobility. So the passport is not just a travel tool, it shows us how the world works, what we normalized, and what we still need to question. That's all, thank you.